The revolution starts here.
I have been silenced for 20 years. I have been slut-shamed.
I will nominate Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the United States Supreme Court.
I was pushed onto the bed, and Brett got on top of me. Brett put his hand over my mouth to stop me from yelling. This is what terrified me the most.
I am innocent of this charge. The other night, Ashley and my daughter Liza said their prayers, and little Liza, all of 10 years old, said to Ashley, we should pray for the woman.
Don't look away from me. Look at me and tell me that it doesn't matter what happened to me.
What we're going to do is make our case to the American people because they will rise up.
I think it would be proper to delay the floor vote for up to, but not more than 1 week.
That perennial question, what if anything has changed after Lewinsky, after Anita Hill, after Weinstein, after Me Too and the whole Time's Up movement? America's still roaring its partisan anger tonight. Those who think an innocent man is being hung out to dry, and those who think a woman who spoke so publicly of her pain has still not been believed. First thing tonight, we're joined by Ana Maria Arquilla, one of the women who confronted Senator Flake in the lift today. Let's firstly hear a little bit of what she said to him.
What do you think? Respond. I understand, but tell me, I'm standing right here in front of you. What do you have? Do you think that he's telling the truth? No. Do you think that he's telling the truth to the country?
Ana Maria, you stopped Jeff Flake as he was going into that lift. Was that planned, or was that a response immediately after he voted?
I went to visit his office before the meeting of the Judiciary Committee started in the hopes that maybe I would be able to talk to him and share a few words of my story. I went there with a young woman who had just shown up for the first time to the Capitol to try to make her story count for something. And as we were standing in front of his office, we saw a statement that Senator Flake put out that said that he was getting ready to vote for the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh. And immediately after, he came out of the elevator, he came out of his office, and we, in an outpouring of frustration and rage and sadness and anger, stopped him and confronted him and forced him to listen to our stories and to listen to our questions. Do you think that Brett Kavanaugh is telling us the truth? Do you think that Brett Kavanaugh deserves to be in the Supreme Court? What message do you want to send to your children and my children when you vote for someone who will be who is accused of sexual violence and will be sitting in the court for the next 40 or 50 years? And what did you see on his face? How did he react when you said that to him? I think he wanted to be anywhere else but in that elevator. He wanted that moment to end. He wanted that interaction to stop. He had a really hard time looking in the face. He, I think, understood and had to confront really the level of pain and rage that women across the country feel in these moments, watching the hearings and watching Dr. Blasey Ford put on trial literally in front of millions of people. And I think that he had to confront the emotion and examine his decisions again. Do you think that was what changed his mind? He went back into the committee room and he asked for a delay of a week. Do you think that was as a consequence of your actions in the lift? I think it was the consequence of the thousands of people that have told their stories. If it had been just me and Maria telling our stories, it would have no consequence. It was the result of thousands of people coming out, telling their stories, showing up to their offices, and millions of people watching Dr. Blasey Ford be put on trial. And so it's really the result of the collective effort of all of us trying to make sure that our country doesn't shy away from staring at the darkness and the shame of sexual violence and a culture that condones it by ignoring survivors.
Anna Maria Arkilla, it's great to talk to you this evening. Thank you for your time. A difficult line, but I'm sure viewers will understand. We got Anna Maria Arkilla just in the last few minutes as she was coming out. Well, over the past few nights, we've been looking extensively at the rights and wrongs of trial by public opinion. Tonight, we're putting Me Too under the spotlight. Where does this hearing leave the defining movement of the last 18 months? Joining us now, Emily Birnbaum, who's been following events from The Hill, Mona El-Tahawy, the author from Montreal, and Sadie Doyle, who wrote Trainwreck, joins us from New York. Very nice to have you all with us this evening. Emily, if I can just start with you, taking us through a day of such extreme fluctuations. Where do you think we end today?
So as I was on my way to the studio, actually, I saw that President Trump has authorized an FBI investigation. Well, the White House is the only body that can order an FBI investigation. So essentially earlier today, the Senate Judiciary Committee, through its weight behind that, said, okay, let's open it up. An investigation that's 1 week long, limited in scope. It's very clear what they mean by that. And so Trump has said, go ahead. So the next week there will be an FBI investigation.
How pivotal do you think that moment, Jeff Flake and the sex abuse survivors in the lift, were to, if you like, the optics of how this looked to the wider world?
It was an enormously dramatic moment. A lot of congressional reporters, people who have been covering Congress for years, said they haven't seen anything quite like it. It's hard to tell if that's why Senator Flake did what he did. He's known to flip-flop. He's known to consider himself sort of a maverick figure. He's obviously retiring, so he, is kind of a loose cannon. But I think there's no doubt that people watching this interaction around the world saw it as symbolic of what the greater political conversation that's happening right now.
Mona El-Tahawy, if I can just come to you, do you sense that the hearing that we've witnessed over the past couple of days has been, if you like, the Me Too movement's biggest scalp, or has it exposed where it falls short?
No, I think that this is a fantastic moment to take Me Too forward, because I think the whole ethos of Me Too, which was started by the black feminist activist Tarana Burke in 2006, is to put the world on notice about the destruction, just how destructive patriarchy is. And I think that what we're witnessing now, what we witnessed from Anita Hill 27 years ago, and what we must continue, is the total and utter destruction of patriarchy. I think what we witnessed in the elevator today in the Senate is that we must defy, we must disobey, and we must disrupt patriarchy at every turn. We must make patriarchy fear women. And I think what we've been seeing since Tarana Burke began Me Too in 2006, and since it became so global last year when white actresses took it globally, is that, first of all, a reminder that when black women warn us of these things, as Anita Hill did 27 years ago, as Tarana Burke did in 2006, the world doesn't pay attention. America doesn't pay attention because white supremacy is in power. But when white women finally begin to understand that white supremacy and patriarchy hurts them personally, this is when they begin to pay attention. So I think this is a great moment to tell white American women, who in their majority have been voting for the GOP, you must join forces to disrupt, disobey, and defy patriarchy, and make patriarchy fear women to understand how damaging it is to women's lives.
I'm going to move to Sadie Doyle. This is an optimistic take on what has, if you like, been achieved. A lot of people will be looking at those echoes of Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas and say, actually, nothing has really been achieved. I wonder whether you think that the system itself is changing, Sadie Doyle.
I absolutely agree with Mona that by striking at sexual violence, we are striking at the roots of patriarchy. However, patriarchy is, fully stocked with means of defending itself. When Anita Hill came forward, in 1991, we didn't even really have a common understanding of what sexual harassment was. It was something that happened to a lot of women, but they didn't have a name for it. Now we have a full-throated, thriving movement, but Christine Blasey Ford is being treated in some ways with a little bit less due process than Anita Hill was. We had to throw ourselves into elevators to get an FBI investigation. So what we're seeing is that even though women have moved forward, men have not, and the U.S. government really has not. We're coming up against the backlash, and it's a hard one.
A lot of women and men would have watched Kavanaugh's testimony yesterday and said that is actually how an innocent man reacts. So I guess my question is this still dividing along gender lines or party lines, Mona?
No, I think the way that Brett Kavanaugh reacted yesterday is very typical of men and of white patriarchy that is very entitled and very wealthy and very privileged. And I think that it's a reminder that the only emotion that men are allowed to express because of patriarchy is anger. And that is actually the only emotion that women are not allowed to express. So I think what we saw yesterday is essentially white patriarchy on the ropes. And I think we need to get into that ring and just give it a knockout. We are talking about a country, the United States of America, that is the most powerful country in the world, in which a man accused by at least 20 women of sexual assault was elected to be president. This is a message to all women that your bodies are fair game. So how long do women have to accept this?
Okay.
This is why I'm calling for the utter destruction of patriarchy.
Well, let me ask Emily, I wonder how much you think that this is actually not about gender wars. It's completely linked to the midterms. We've seen two senators, Democratic senators, Joe Manchin, Heidi Heitkamp, who are fighting for their own Senate seats, very much undecided, very much on the fence. Is this all about the politics of what happens in the November elections?
I think it's for a large part about what happens in the midterm elections. It's inextricable from that. So both Joe Manchin from West Virginia and Heidi Heitkamp from North Dakota, those are states that Trump won by a very wide margin, and they are doing anything they can to keep their seats. So they're in a difficult position, polling consistently shows that Republicans are standing behind Brett Kavanaugh by more than 50%. Though it's dropping, they are. So,
okay. A very last one to Sadie, if I can. Sadie Doyle, where do you think it goes from here? What will next week bring us?
I am more hopeful than I was yesterday. I still think that the GOP and several of its members have proclaimed loudly that the goal is getting Kavanaugh through. My concern is that this FBI investigation is just another smokescreen. It's another version of the show trial they put Dr. Ford through. It's something they're doing so that they can appear to have been fair. I'm not convinced that any fairness is going to happen.
Thank you all very much indeed. We should add that Brett Kavanaugh, of course, denies the allegations against him. We really appreciate your time with us on Newsnight.